Welcome. Today I'll be talking about the 4 phases of mind and how we can best delineate the most prioritized phase of mind that you are most commonly or ordinarily thinking or inhabiting or visiting. Okay, so I'd like to begin here in the first quadrant as the ordinary thinking. The ordinary thinking is the everyday kind of random association with thought, with things, places, people, objects. You know, when you see somebody in the corner of your eye and you think about someone that looks like that you know, maybe it's a celebrity, maybe it's somebody, a friend or a relative, or someone that you are acquainted with, and that is the associative thinking that the ordinary thinking is. So when you walk down the street and you see a dog, and that dog reminds you of a dog that you were afraid of when you were a kid, and then when you think about that dog, it reminds you of your childhood, and then another memory of your childhood comes to you. And this is associative thinking. This is a trail or a link, a connection of thinking that will ultimately lead you in circles. It is not deliberate. It is completely kind of artificial in a way, because you're not really participating within your own consciousness. The association is happening regardless. So it's kind of, in a way, you are unconscious within your own conscious awareness of your thoughts and how they connect with each other. So this is ordinary thinking, unfortunately. So we are all associating ourselves with past, with things that we have known and that we've experienced before, and we're associating the new objects, people, and places in our reality and in our circumstances, in our situation, as something that we are familiar with. We associate it with something that is already occurred. So this association is largely, the identity that makes up who you are and what you do in the world. So it's all based on past things that, maybe even your parents told you that you didn't really experience, but you adopted that idea and that belief, and it made so many connections through association that it became so well traveled, so to speak. It became so well familiarized with your associative thinking and your connecting with other things, that it became a belief. So when you start to connect, when your mind starts to connect without you having to do anything, because the mind is occurring whenever you breathe. So the breath is connected with thoughts, and whenever you breathe, you are thinking. So that's why a lot of spiritual and Eastern, practices, yoga, tantra, all prioritize the breath and kind of controlling your breath so that you can be more mindful of what you're thinking. So anyway, the association that goes along with you throughout your life, and the more that you are operating from this place, ordinary thinking, the more that you are unconsciously associating things with other things, people with other people, and essentially the past repeats itself. It will be circular in nature. It will be cyclical. It will be always converging or coming back to a similar experience or lesson that was not integrated into the consciousness. So I won't go too much into that, but basically, ordinary thinking is associative thinking. It is associating your identity with something that is known, with another object that you identify with, or that you choose not to identify with, and the whole process of connecting and making new connections in association with another, with a new idea, a new thought, a new belief. When you start to make new connections effortlessly, because that's what ordinary thinking does, then you become unconscious kind of in a lot of ways to what you are making new associations with. So that's why it is important, when you adopt a new belief system or adopt a new idea, adopt a new perspective, that you become even more aware to what you are associating that perspective or idea or belief with, because if not, it'll ultimately come back into full circle without really separating too much from that old belief and that old kind of idea or perspective. So ordinary thinking, guys, I'll get on here. Contemplation is the next. So if ordinary thinking is random and in all directions and is kind of reaching and striving and grasping and constantly trying to hold on to something no matter what it is, contemplation is narrowing that perspective and narrowing your consciousness so that you see in one direction. If ordinary thinking is all directions, contemplation is just one direction. So a lot of sciences are contemplated. A lot of mathematics are contemplated. It's directed thought that is only associated with a particular outcome. So when you're thinking about solving a problem, you are contemplating. You are thinking only in regards to that problem and only in regards to a solution to that problem. So the contemplation, is adopted by a lot of the scientific community, again, and the people who are really set on changing something or solving or making a new perspective in life, a new trying to shift a understanding. So contemplation, mind you, bad or good. Mind you, there is no right, wrong, good or bad thing in this whole quadrant, but we have various degrees of consciousness and how dense or undense it is. So really, ordinary thinking is really dense thought. So it's like layers and layers and layers and layers of constant thinking, constant reasoning, constant excuses, constant expectations. And a great quote from Osho is that the mind will want to know what it can take, and the heart will know what it can give. So that's a great just analogy. That's a great little summary of what the heart and the mind and how they kind of really balance each other. So contemplation is the viewing of something that is in a certain direction. Contemplation is something that you usually contemplate about, something, a problem or something internally that's going on that you really want to solve or kind of figure out. Contemplating is very much figuring out what it is that you are going to do, or what you're going to change, or how you're going to see something. So it is a directed awareness that usually scientific minds and really a lot of logicians and mathematicians use, because they're focusing on one particular equation, one particular formula. They're wanting a result, and that's what contemplation is kind of striving to get a new result, whether that be like a physical result, like, how to make more money, or get more followers on Instagram, or get more horsepower out of an engine. These are all equations. These are all contemplations to get a new result. Okay. So next we have concentration. Concentration is rather than ordinary thinking where thoughts are random and they're going in all directions. Contemplation is going in one view, in one direction, in a singular direction, and concentration is where you're looking at one thing. So if you say, for instance, that you're looking through a camera and you're looking at a landscape. So the landscape, you're associating all those things in ordinary thinking within the landscape. You're thinking about all the trees and the mountain and maybe, a landmark in the scene. Like it could be a hill or a cactus or a big tree, or it could be a special thing inside of this image. And within that image, you associate those things in that image with other images that you've seen. So this is very much time oriented, where you're going back in time, or maybe even kind of fascinating or entertaining your imagination about what it is you're going to experience in the future. Maybe you haven't been to Mount Fuji, but that's what this image reminds you of, and you start to fantasize about your vacation trip to Mount Fuji in the future. So that's associative thinking. You're associating that image with something else other that is not a part of that image. Okay? So if you're contemplating about that image, you're actually just focusing on one area. So let's say, for instance, within this image that you're viewing, you see that there is a mountain, and you kind of blur out all the other landscape in the image, and you focus on this mountain and you contemplate the mountain, and you kind of see within this mountain, you see like different things, like you kind of see how what best way you can make your way up the mountain. You start to think about what degree apex the mountain is. If it's like, if the pinnacle of the mountain is 54 degrees or something like that, your mind starts to think in terms of what exactly is that mountain, how you can learn more about that mountain, and what kind of species may inhabit that mountain, what kind of trees are there in the mountain that aren't in your landscape. That's contemplating the mountain. You're contemplating the mountain inside of the image that is kind of blurring out the rest of the image, but you're contemplating on that particular area. So, and concentration is where you begin to focus on just one, maybe plant, where maybe within the image you see a cactus or like a special kind of unique plant within this image. So you concentrate on that, and this is where concentration and contemplation really are different, because concentration, you are actually feeling, you're feeling what it is to really, it's a lot more intuitive. Like there's a lot less thoughts, because the more you go on this kind of in the quadrants within this spectrum, the less thoughts occur. So, or I should say, the more directed and deliberate your thoughts become. So in concentration, you know, as what compared to contemplation, where you were thinking about this mountain and how you could, best understand this mountain. Concentration is where you're actually like experiencing the mountain for what it is and all that it is. So concentration is focusing on this one point and this one kind of amalgamation of this point that you're viewing. So a better example would maybe be if you were to sit down in a chair and look at the wall, and you, instead of looking at just one corner of the room, like you're in a room and you had 4 corners to choose from, and within these 4 corners you chose one corner. So that would be contemplation. You're contemplating a corner of the room. And then concentration is where you find a point of the corner. You find somewhere within this 9-foot corner of the room, you find a point that really catches your interest, and you focus on that point. Okay? And rather than kind of thinking about the corner and like how, what degree it is, what angle the corner is. Usually they're 90-degree angles, but you kind of get an idea. And the contemplation about like, you're contemplating on like how long that corner is. So it's very logical, right? Contemplation is very logical. Concentration is not so logical. You're thinking, you're focusing your attention, but focusing your attention is not inherently indicative or implying of logic, reasoning, excuses, results, or kind of expectations. So if you're looking at this corner within this room and you find a point where you want to concentrate on, maybe it's the center, 4.5 feet up and there's 4.5 feet down, and you look in the very center of the corner of the room and you focus and you kind of experience that there is a center. You experience that there's a point where you're focusing, and you could even go up to that center. You could go up to that corner and mark it with a pen and kind of sit there and concentrate on that mark where you marked the corner, right? And that is kind of concentration. So this could happen also within your consciousness, where you're not actually physically looking at anything. You're just concentrating on a particular, it could be a image within your mind. It could be a particular mantra, right? Concentration. You could be concentrating on a particular statement or a sutra or something that is like basically very whittled down and very basic. You're experiencing and extracting all that you can from this one thing of your concentration, this object of concentration. And when you focus on this object of your concentration, you begin to experience a subjective experience of it, rather than associating the object of your concentration with other objects of your concentration, where then you will start to go in other directions, right? Because if we were to concentrate here on this one area and we were to go backwards, we would start to associate this concentrated point with other things, other objects. We could associate the image that we're concentrating on with another kind of experience, another idea, another thought, another statement, another belief. We could start to backtrack and from concentration to contemplation about how this statement or this belief is also similar to another belief. And keep in mind that, backtracking is not a bad or good thing. It is just that there's something else. There's something else that your consciousness is going towards, and there's nothing right, wrong, good, or bad about that. So during this concentration, you are within your own mind, within your own subjective experience. You see that there's a image within your mind, and you focus on that, and you begin to experience. So rather, again, as I was saying, rather than objectively looking at this object and thinking of other objects, you begin to develop a relationship that's personal and that's heartfelt, and that's becoming more intuitive and becoming more felt and experienced, rather than having more thoughts about that object. So in essence, you are generating a subjective experience from the object. So you're becoming less thought-provoking. The object of your concentration, again, whether it be an image or a statement, is going to not provoke as much other thoughts. It's not going to continue to send you in all these different directions of thinking and association. It's going to help you. If you were concentrating on that one idea, then you begin to gather a kind of sense about that. And that sense is felt. And that sense and that feeling is not moving. It's just you're feeling into that object or that experience or that memory, or the it could be, the cactus that you're looking at in the image. It could be the mountain. You're starting to feel like, how would you feel if you were racing to the top of that mountain, or if you were hiking up that mountain? Like, you would transport your consciousness there and kind of really develop this subjective experience to it. And you would it's not so much about really trying to figure it out as much in concentration. You're just trying to really experience, if that makes sense. You're really just trying to know through being there, rather than seeing it. Concentration is very much feeling, and it's very much traveling to that time and space, location, and that, being that symbolic representation within your consciousness, or that objective thing in your image, your camera image. Okay, so last is meditation. So if in concentration you are focusing on a singular point, whether it be objective and it be physical, or it be subjective and it be mental and it be like imagination, that would be concentration. Meditation is where you actually, so if we take for an example, we marked this point on the wall with the marker, and we were concentrating on that marker, on that point, on that marked point on the wall in the corner. Meditation is where that you no longer actually see that point, and you no longer actually are associating your awareness with that point. And meditation is a point of no thought. It's where you are no longer actively thinking about anything. You're no longer really associating yourself with any one thing. You are just being. It's completely subjective. Meditation is a complete inner visitation. It's a inner inhabitance, and in this inner inhabitance of meditation, you are not thinking. There's no thought. And I know that this is hard to understand for many. This is kind of hard to conceive or kind of experience for many, but that's in meditation when you experience no thought. And again, we experience concentration a lot. When we're doing things we love, like artists are concentrating on their work, on their music, on their painting. Or craftsmen, are focusing on their woodwork, or their metal that they're working. And this is concentration. It is a meditative experience in itself. And that it's not really rational in the way that it's getting you results right then and there. It's not doing that for you in concentration. Like an artist works on their art because it gives them an experience. It gives them an experience of love, and it gives them an experience of passion and complete kind of no thought. They're experiencing somewhat no thinking. They're experiencing to be in that moment, that now, where they're crafting this beautiful artwork, and they if they were to think at any time, it would mess them up. It would mess them up out of their zone, right? Concentration is very much you're in the zone. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just here now in the moment. And meditation is where you actually transcend any reverting or visitation into the past or into the future, and you're completely now. You kind of, and there's going to be emotions and feelings that come up in silence, in no thought, in meditation, and your ability or your preparation, your preparedness for those things that come up are a significant indication of how well you're dealing with them. Because if you're meditating and you start to revert back to old ways, like maybe you're meditating and a trauma comes up, and something that happened in your past and your childhood comes up, and you begin to experience that same emotion, and then you go back to thinking about it. You know, you go back to ordinary thinking, and you can no longer really accept it without and not judging that, and kind of, I know it may be difficult to experience, but this is in essence what meditation is. It's non-judgment. It's no thought. It is not associating that experience that you are perceiving within that meditation. You're not judging it. You're not criticizing it. You're not even feeding it any more thoughts. You're just completely experiencing it without any kind of speculation about whether or not that is real or it's unreal. Because in meditation, you experience what you experience, and it feels real. It is real in its own right, because it gives you a subjective experience, and it makes you feel something in meditation, and that is what is real. That's what's true. I talk about this in many other videos. What your subjective state of being is the only thing that is real within this physical life that we experience. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that this was an insightful video, and that you can begin to understand and delineate your own phase of consciousness, and your own kind of associate a quadrant with where you're visiting the most, and where you most desire to be, kind of. Okay? So thank you guys again, and I'll see you on another video.